Hey folks, Nathan here from Star Wars Beyond the Films, the Star Wars Timeline Gold, and the Star Wars Reports Rebels Roundtable, bringing you a look at another Fantasy Flight Games Star Wars product here. This is Age of Rebellion Desperate Allies. This is a source book for diplomat characters in this case. I actually think this one is one that'll be pretty useful if you're going to be using any diplomat characters. You start out, of course, with your just brief introduction here, and then you've got Chapter 1, Voices of Revolution. This is where you get information on new diplomat backgrounds, diplomat duties. Nice little table there, as we tend to see in these class-specific guidebooks here. And then new species. 3, again, pretty freaking ugly. We have the Kamasi, of course, big from the Legends continuity. The Nemoidians, and I'm pretty sure when you play a Nemoidian, you got to move your lips as if they don't match what you're saying. And then you have a Gossim, right, like Shumai there from the Commerce Guild. Gives you your background for each. I do think there's some interesting information here, particularly about the Gossim in later eras, that I think is pretty cool, though to be honest with you, you don't get a whole lot of new Legends type of background material here. Not a lot of new tidbits for continuity fans. Very, very straightforward this time in terms of the writing. All right, then as far as your different specializations, you got a little section on that. You've got your Advocate, Analyst, and Propagandist, the one that sounds like it'll be probably a more fun one of those to play with your various talent trees that go with them. New talents, new motivations. Then your new signature abilities. In this case, you have Diplomatic Solution and Unmatched Insight. Chapter 2, Tools of Intrigue. That's your gear, basically. Some weapons, armor. You got a few ships and vehicles and whatnot. None of these really stood out as really awesome to me, but your mileage, of course, will vary depending on what types of gear you intend to use. And then you've got Diplomatic Missions. Chapter 3, the last chapter. This is the one that goes into things like, how is it that you're going to integrate a diplomat into a campaign? What are their responsibilities? How does it work? How do you fit them in? How do you inspire them? What should they act like? What kind of encounters could you use that make sense for diplomats? And so on and so on. And then eventually, after some sample encounters, you get a couple of example missions, or whatever you want to call them. Mission to Naboo being one of them, Iridonian Separatists. Sort of very generalized ideas of missions they can go through. And then diplomat campaigns, very generalized ideas of backbones you could use for future campaigns. Then you got your Rebel base upgrades, and pretty much that's it. Wrapping things up to some last notes at the end here. For those who are looking for new continuity information, there's really not much to this one. 30 bucks as we're used to, a little bit over 20, about between 20 and 25 depending on where you buy it, most places with a discount online. But as little as this does give us as far as new continuity information, I must say, I've always found diplomats to be a type of character that really seems like it'd be very difficult to work in relative to the others that you can use in Age of Rebellion, or Edge of the Empire, to be honest with you. Whereas, in this case, this really does a very good job of giving you a sense of how the characters could work into different scenarios. A diplomat doesn't have to be doing diplomacy per se. Those skills have other applications, and they can be worked into many and varied scenarios. So, if you're working on an Age of Rebellion campaign, you got players playing as diplomats, or you're going to play as a diplomat, probably ought to check this one out, if only because you really need to get a sense of how to fit these somewhat oddball characters into a classic Star Wars adventure.